Hello, I'm happy to be here today and to introduce artist Roanne Thomas, who is a mixed media collage artist. And she's also a member of our Jetpack Club on Artists Get Your Jetpack On. And the thought was originally when I started this, the newsletter Artist Jetpack was to involve artists of 50 years old and up to have a place to share their experience, to learn new things, to promote their business, and to look at making art through the lens of a person of our age group. So before we had some newsletters that captured this in writing, but I thought it would be a really good idea. I spoke with Roanne about this of having a live interview so that you can really learn a little bit more about this artist's progress and her life. So so welcome, Roanne.
All right, thank
It's
you for
the
having
first,
me, Heather. This was a
you're
great
welcome.
idea.
It's the first time, so it might have a few wobbles in it, but we'll do our best. So I thought maybe we could start out with just learning a little bit about who you are and what you make and where you're from and anything you'd like to add to that.
Sure. So I'm based in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and I've kind of been out and about with my art for about 5 years now. And by that, I mean participating in shows and actively selling my art and sharing it on social media and that sort of thing. Um, I still actually have a career as an academic. So I do arts and health research at the University of Ottawa and teach an arts and health course. So arts have always been a part of what I've been doing in terms of my main career. Everything from, working with a visual artist to theater and filmmaking. So that's all. I've been lucky that that's been part of my kind of breadwinning effort, if you will. But yeah, it started with mixed media collage art probably about 8 years ago, I would say, and was encouraged to participate in a show by one of my teachers. I've had some fabulous teachers, so that's been really kind of influential. But she encouraged me to apply for a show, and I did. And my goal was to make back my registration fee. And I did that, and it was great. And then COVID hit. So I really had to switch to more of an online presence and get comfortable with doing things like producing an e-newsletter because nothing was happening in person. And now, interestingly, that's shifted again. So I'm now kind of more in various markets, art shows, and I'm associated with a gallery, which is very nice. But yeah, there's been a few times just in 5 years when I've really had to kind of switch gears and shift to something else. So it's been interesting, I will say.
Did you, just on that note, because it sounds like you've had to be really flexible in your work and how you promote yourself. How was that for you? Was it like a huge learning curve, or were you already familiar with how to use online services and that kind of thing?
Sure, yeah. So in my academic life, I did have a website. So I was kind of familiar with the back end and how to do basic edits. And, I was familiar with preparing content for a website, which is, I think, kind of a unique endeavor because, it has to be inviting, it has to be concise, it has to be compelling. So I did have, kind of transferable skills. I wasn't really very much involved with social media, so I had to get comfortable with that. And I'd never done an e-newsletter, like an electronic newsletter, so that was new for me too. Um, so yeah, so it was kind of a mix of drawing upon transferable skills and developing new skills for the business side of the art as well. And yeah, so I'm wondering, like, is that typical of the Jetpackers group and the people that you've worked with, Heather? Do they have, are they drawing on other careers or are we kind of a mixed group?
I think a mixed group. And even in my own circle, in my own town of artists, people do. Some artists are really comfortable with in person only and less comfortable with the online presence, and also feel maybe a little pressured to keep creating in order and to keep pushing their art online, which may not feel comfortable if you come from a place of not having to do that before. So I find that there's a mix, and then there's probably some that do just strictly online and very little in person. I mean, I guess we're lucky in these times that there is that opportunity to be more flexible with those options. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of people that, particularly in my age group, perhaps our age group, that struggle with where to go because things keep changing all the time. Like, what are you supposed to do next? You get a lot of mixed messages out there about the way to be out there, and confidence too. I mean, how much do you stay humble? And yet, how do you still seem like you're a valid artist and you're excited about what you make, etc., right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a balance for sure. And I think that's one of the, when I was thinking about starting a newsletter, what encouraged me to do that was people saying, that always belongs to you. Your mailing list always belongs to you. So no matter what changes with social media, you always have your own email list. So yeah, so I think that's been helpful for me, but it is really tricky trying to figure out that balance between sales and, sharing, I guess, for a lack of a better word.
Mhm. Exactly. And just the whole idea of the email list. I know for some artists it's like, well, just email. People don't read email anymore. But personally, I've also found that it does really make a difference when you have your followers. And just to ask you a little bit more about that, how do you develop your email list? Like, where did the folks come from, and how do you capture their attention enough to to have them want to receive your newsletters or hear more about your work?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure where all of my people have come from. As I think about it, it's probably mostly from in-person events. So I do get the occasional sign up on my website, but it's interesting because we're talking about an electronic medium that kind of creates some distance from people. And yet, I, as I think about my email list, it's really the people that I connected with in person who are on that list. So we make kind of a connection and they sign up. Mostly it's people who are either interested in learning from me because I offer workshops, or it's people who've purchased a piece of my art at a market or a sale. I used to try and encourage everyone to sign up who would come to see me at a market event, but I found that didn't really work as well. So I now invite people if they've purchased something. So there's kind of a connection there. I've talked to them a little bit about my art, and then I say, I have this newsletter. It's not spammy. Would you like to sign up for it? And it's kind of evolved my newsletter, and I've taken different short-term workshops on things on how to develop the workshop, and I've gotten to a place where it's really more about sharing than about sales. And there's people who sell very aggressively, and I think sure that works for them, but I had to really get to a format that I was comfortable with, which I think is more about what can I offer and thinking about the newsletter as an offering.
Well, we just talked about it a few minutes ago, but I see that that comes through very clearly for me, is that you're offering people more. Um, it's something that I would look for. I read it and I look forward to reading it because I think, what is she going to come up with this next next time? It's interesting, but also it's not just it's about you and about your reader or about your subscriber. So it's really great the way you're thinking about that, and your language is such as well too. It's like an offering, and if I don't even feel, I barely feel a soft sell in it, which I think is important. But there is, I mean, people can still go to space and buy your work. You have that, it's there loud and clear. But you're not saying buy me, buy me, buy me every second word. It's your own individual approach, right? And I think it works really well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's certainly evolved, and I find that it helps orient me to kind of my work and what I've been doing creatively because, and I'm not sure it's the same for you, Heather, or for other artists, but there are weeks where I think, well, I did nothing. Like creatively, nothing happened. But as I go to write my newsletter, I think, okay, what can I share? What did I do this week? Oh, I actually did something. It may not have been that exciting, but I got the backs of my greeting cards printed for a market. And, thinking about, well, if I share that, then it gives people a little more insight into the process behind everything. And, I can talk a little bit about what makes my greeting cards unique and that sort of thing. So I find the newsletter, I mean, I want to kind of be of service to my audience, but it does a lot for me as well. And then I always begin, for example, with a quotation, and it might be something from a poem or just, something some famous person has said, but it kind of reorients me in choosing that. And I can kind of say, oh, well, this was what the week was, and this is what I want to carry forward a little bit. So it's good in that way, but it has probably taken a few years for it to evolve to that kind of space and that kind of format.
Yeah, well, it's apparent that it feels, but actually, quite honestly, it feels very natural, like you just rolled it out. Almost like it's a conversation. It's really nice that way. I do appreciate the poem or the poem or quote at the very beginning too. It does help the reader enter into a little bit more of who you are. And I think still that is one thing that's still very important, is that connection with the artist, because I know for the art that I've collected of other artists, it's because I know them and I appreciate something about them already, as well as an admiration for their talent. But it feels nice to have a little bit of them on my wall or in my home, and I think the more you give people, the more they have that sense that they're not just getting a piece of flat art, or maybe not flat, but a piece of art. They're getting a little bit of that person that comes through as well too, which I think really in this day and age really makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think it's a little bit easier to maybe um, share some of that, to be maybe a little bit vulnerable. I mean, I don't share a lot about my personal life. I keep it very focused on what I'm doing creatively, but you're still a little bit vulnerable when you share things like that. And I think for me, sharing in that kind of newsletter format over social media. I mean, I do the social media thing too, but it's just a little more comfortable because there's that connection, as you say, established with the audience already.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's just too much that is at a distance for us, that when we get something that's a little bit more up close, it feels almost a bit surprising. Yeah, especially with art online now too. There's so much. There's a lot of pressure to put a lot on and be
Mhm.
constant about it, and work yourself ragged. But you can spend a lot of time doing that and then not doing your art. It's a real, that would be another question I have for you. Is it hard to make that balance?
Um, yeah, sometimes I think it is. I think
Hi, sorry for the pause there. It was my dog's having a barkathon in the background, so I decided to pause it. And so I'm just going to ask Roanne the question again, just so we're up to speed. And just around Roanne, how do you keep that balance between your working on any kind of promotion or social media, or you say you don't do a lot of social media, but even your newsletters and
Mhm.
also your art making?
Yeah. So I send my newsletter out on Sundays. And that's kind of that was an intentional choice, thinking that, a Sunday might be a time where people have, a few moments to linger over coffee or maybe have tea and read it later in the day. So because it goes out on Sunday, I work on it on Saturdays. So that's just kind of a given for me that I'll take between 1 and 2 hours on Saturday to do it. And then first thing Sunday morning, do a bit of editing. So that balance is kind of built in right there. And I know people who do newsletters once a month. I'm thinking of this artist who does a huge PDF, like a big document of her sketches and research that she's doing, and I love receiving it. But I know for me that wouldn't work because it would just become too much to talk about. Like in my artwork, I'm very focused on everyday life, kind of things we take for granted. And so if I'm going to write about that in the newsletter, then a whole month of everyday moments it would just I'm overwhelmed just thinking about it. So for me it's about having that routine, and I don't have as much of a routine as for the creative piece of it, but it's kind of more through the week. Where do I see some moments in between my academic career where I can create and kind of look at that. So it's not a hard and fast schedule, but kind of having that routine really helps because I know that's what I'm going to be doing on Saturday at some point, is spending a couple of hours on the newsletter. So for me, it's kind of having that established and then looking at gaps in my week where I can fill in the more creative piece around my other work.
Excellent. And it looks, your studio looks lovely from here, by the way. It looks like a truly creative space.
It's
Is
a
it,
mess.
that's a truly creative space. But tell me, is it like in your house? Is it a room dedicated to your work? Can you close yourself off to have a little privacy and to make?
Yeah, so I'm in, I guess, what would have been a tiny bedroom in a 1950s bungalow. So that's my creative space. But so this feels like quite a luxury, and I just have two plastic tables. They're about I think 6 or 7 feet long, and this is where I create. And I've got a tool chest. You can see my red tool chest. That was kind of a hand-me-down in the background, and that's where I store a lot of things, and in a closet as well. But this is a luxury for me. I started off on my kitchen table and I had a little trolley, and now I have two trolleys. So
Brilliant.
I'm living large now with two tables and two trolleys and my own room. But I did start off with on my kitchen table, and that worked well because I could just push the trolleys out, do some artwork, and then push them back into the spare bedroom. So having an adult child leave home, that helped with the space. I mean, the dream would be to have my own little separate building down a winding path at the bottom of my
Of course.
backyard, but
Yes.
no, not there yet. Don't know if I ever will be, but so it's just a little bedroom where I've carved off some space, and it is good. I can shut the door, so that's nice as well. What about you, Heather? What is your space like? I can see a bit in the background.
This is behind me is mostly one end of the. I'm rather like yourself. I have a room that's dedicated. I haven't had the winding path and the beautiful cottage or whatever at the end of the path, but I have had a couple of studios away from the house in older buildings, and one was in a storefront, which was kind of interesting. And it's great because you go away, and when you're there, you have to work. You're there for that purpose. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's a building that houses other artists. So there's that bonus as well. But what I have right now is basically a room that used to be our kind of little lounge room, and I've made it into my work room. I don't know if I can show you too much of it. I'll try to twist this around and see if you can see. But my area is not that large either. I have a couple of tables I work from. That's really messy right now too. But I am grateful for the space because I use as much as I'm given. So it does mean I can't make large canvases here or work very large, but it does mean that I can be productive and know that everything that's here is my work and I can leave it out, that's always, to me, that's the biggest deal of all, is I really don't like having to put things away, because it'll be harder to get it out again. So
Yeah.
when you can leave it
Yeah.
around you, and also I think when you have your art around you or bits and pieces, it's inspiring, isn't it? Like it
Hmm.
gives you thoughts, and then you come back and look at it and think, oh, I might do this today, or I like this piece of paper that was just hanging on the edge, but I didn't have anything to do with it, the other day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's great. I think you're right. It can be a kitchen table, or it can be a room, or a closet, or whatever you have, as long as you feel you could do some work there.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it helps. You were asking a little bit about too around time and balance. I think one thing I try to do is leave something easy on my table so that when I come back to it, even if a few days go by, then there's something that I can just pick up and do right away. So I try and stop at a stage where I almost know what's going to come
Hmm,
next. And or
interesting.
maybe, leave that piece of paper and not glue it down, but just leave it sitting on top of a piece. And I think that helps too. So, yeah.
That leads me into asking you another question, and how do how if you get stuck, and do you get stuck? Do you have times where you don't want to create or can't create? And if so, how do you get yourself out of that situation? How do you?
Yeah, it's it's tricky that being stuck. And for sure I get stuck and sometimes for weeks at a time. But I think I think it's just knowing that I will come back to it eventually and that the space is here. So I think that's kind of another privilege almost of having a dedicated space is that it's always there for you to come back to it. And if I get stuck on a particular piece, but I'm still, going along and creating most every day, then I'm always working on more than one piece. And I tend to work small, and I never thought about it until you said that, Heather, about the space kind of in some way prescribing how big you can go. And I'm like, yeah, that is a reason that I do work small because it's easier in a smaller space. Um, but I think working small lets me have a few things on the go. So even if one piece is going through that awkward, ugly kind of stage, then I can move to something else. So I think that's really helpful with being stuck and just kind of recognizing the seasons of things, which I think is one of those
Mm,
advantages of being, of our age, 50 and over, you kind of have learned over life, or at least I have, that you're going to have periods that are productive and periods that are more restful too.
yes. Yeah, that's a wonderful way of putting it. I haven't really heard it that way before, but I think it is kind of a celebration of where we are right now, isn't it? Is that we can be a bit more relaxed and not feel as concerned. And I wish that for other artists too, because I think that we can have these fallow times that we just need to meander or think or do other things, and life is full of different options and possibilities. So, you know, inspiration will come.
Yeah.
It does tend to come back, I think. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so I guess I don't have too much more to ask you. I'm not even sure how long we've been talking for, but I feel we've covered a lot in the time. But I'm wondering where you're. Um, I mean, sometimes people think, oh, well, like as I get older, I don't really, maybe I won't do it anymore, or maybe I won't have any passion for it in the same way. If you look ahead, how do you see yourself in your own crystal ball? Where would you like to be?
I'd like to be doing more teaching because I really love connecting with people, and that's been a part of my main career that I've really enjoyed. So I'd love to do more teaching and maybe even have the space to have small groups get together. Right now, I hold my workshops in my home, which has its good sides and its bad sides, but one of them being that I can only have very small groups, but on the other hand, I think, well, more than 4 or 5 people would be a lot to juggle. And
Mhm.
so, so maybe that's a good constraint. So when you ask me where I'd like to be, I think just doing the same, but more of it, experimenting with different materials. I've moved away from using panels to using reclaimed wood, which has been really
Mm.
challenging but very rewarding for me. So, kind of keeping up with that play or experimentation and asking myself, what if? I remember at one of our Jetpackers meetings, someone said that they were doing so much that they were starting to become stressed out, like,
Mm.
and that those weren't her exact words. She said it in a much more eloquent way, but it was kind of like, yeah, having done another career and knowing what that is to maybe work too much, I can say, well, I want more, but I want to be very aware of not turning this into some kind of hyper focused where I'm, overworked again. So I think more, but want to do more, but with balance. Yeah.
It sounds good. It sounds like what a lot of us aspire to have too is just to have a little bit of both or as much as kind of feeds us. Because it sounds like from what you're saying that the work feeds you too. And even with your other career, it gives you some balance as well in your life. So, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
for
that sounds
sure.
wonderful. I don't think you'll ever quit. You sound sound like you'll be
No,
at it.
I've always had to do something with my
Mm.
hands, like from a very young age. So, there will be something. It might not be this exact mixed media collage world, but I do love it. And I mean, the possibilities are really endless. So probably, but something will be keeping me busy creatively, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. Now, so and knowing that, do you have any like last minute words of wisdom to other artists of our time frame?
I think maybe just don't wait until you feel ready. It's funny because I was on Threads yesterday and someone said to artists, like, don't show your work until it's ready. And I'm thinking, well, okay, but if I waited until I personally felt ready, then I probably wouldn't have done anything. So
Mhm.
I think it's if you're getting great feedback on your work, then just go for it. I mean, my first newsletter went out to my mom and my partner and maybe 2 other people, and that was it. So,
Exactly.
but it was good to jump in and get that kind of practice and work on refining that too, so that it got to a place that I'm happy with it. So my advice would be to
Mm.
just do it and jump in and yeah.
Oh, that's great. No, I appreciate that. And also too, like as you mentioned, your friends and your family are if they love your work, that's a really great starting point. It really is. For the people I've heard other artists say, well, they're just friends buying it, or they're just my family, but they're not just. They're people that care about you, love what you do, and that's what you want more of. So I think it's all very valid, and it's a great starting point to experiment, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when you are probably most people are when they start out selling, they're selling to friends. And I think maybe if you're new, to this, you think, well, that was just one friend who bought one piece, but they will come back. So, you kind of at the beginning want to dismiss things a little bit,
Yes.
but I do think these people, if there's a connection with your artwork, they're going to come back, and maybe just to trust that they're not just doing it to make you feel good. I mean,
Yes.
most people aren't going to be that willing to take in someone's artwork just randomly, and
Yeah.
kind that level of generosity. I mean, I'm sure people are quite generous, but trust that there's something more there. Mhm.
And your friends and family have friends too, and other people in their lives. So it's a way of kind of, it snowballs in its own way. I think it starts to, and plus your confidence is
For
affected as
sure.
well, I believe, when people start showing interest.
For
So,
sure. And
yeah,
and it's so, yeah, like it's such an incredible feeling to go into someone's home and see where they've placed your artwork. Like,
it is.
that's
It
really
really is.
incredible.
Well, it's really been lovely to talk to you, Roanne. I think I think we did okay for our first time. What do you think?
I think so too. I
We
was nervous, but it was a lot easier than I thought it would be.
you
So
did
yeah,
well. You didn't seem nervous.
I need to take my own advice and just jump in, I think. So, but I'm glad we
Exactly.
did this, and I hope people found it helpful.
Yes. And if people want to find you, I'll also write something under the video to for your locating your however people want to reach you with your through your website or subscribe to your newsletter or I forget, are you on Instagram too or any other places or would you like to still stay with those two for now?
Sure, I'm at artbyroanne.com, and that's where you can sign up for my newsletter. And I'm sporadically on Instagram, and that's also Art by Roanne.
Okay, that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Roanne, and we'll see you soon at the club. And take good care and keep on making.
All right. Thank you
It's
so
been a
much,
pleasure.
Heather.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.